In this video, we'll learn to create a UV map for a dress. This is part 2 of a series that goes through all the steps it takes to make a dress in Blender. If you haven't been following along, make sure you do part 1 first. You can see a 3D view of a dress similar to the one we'll be making in the link below. If you want to add any texture or detail to your dress, or to any other geometry for that matter, you will need to create a UV map. So a UV map is a way to tell the computer to take a 2D image like you see on the left and apply it to a 3D shape like you see on the right. On the left you see here this little shape, these shapes, that's the UV map for this dress. It looks kind of like we took the dress and we cut it all up and laid it out flat. I like to think of it as if you had an orange and you unpeeled it and laid it out all flat on a table. That's like a UV map. And if you take that orange and reshape it into a sphere like it was before, that would be the UV map applied to the 3D object. Okay, let's make it. Let's get set up to do some UV editing. So we will go to our UV editing workspace. And if you were doing the complete character tutorial, you'll see this. Just hit slash to exit isolate mode. Grab your dress and hit slash again to re-enter isolate mode. And now let's add a texture map to the dress. So let's select the dress to make sure this material is showing what's attached to the dress. And then let's just make sure. So if you have the dress selected, go to the material properties here and just make sure that this is the right material. There's only one material, so this is the right material. Okay, so now let's go over to the material editor and hit Shift A, S, I, M, A for image texture. Go like that. Let's attach color to base color. And I will give you a link to a JPEG you can use for this, but I'm going to navigate to where I saved it. So let's click open. And let's go and find it. So it's here and textures and Tomcat UV Map 2. Okay, there we go, it's applied. Now let's go and make it visible here too. So if you have a lot of textures, you can go here and type in what the file was called, or even a part of what the file was called. I'm going to type in UV because I remember that wasn't a name, and Tomcat UV Map 2. Okay, so we've got that here. Let's make some space for ourselves to work. Let's grab our mesh and go to edit mode to make sure it's working. Okay, so if you grab the geometry in the 3D viewport, you can see it selects it in the UV editor and vice versa. So that's good. Let's leave X-ray mode. We want to cut up this dress so we can lay things out flat and have as little distortion as possible. So we need to do that by creating seams, which are these red lines here. When we're doing that, we also want to think, let's bring back our sketch here. You also want to think about your UVing and where you want it to look really good and have like no distortion, and parts where it's okay to have some distortion. So if you look at our sketch here, I think this little flower area, I think we don't want to have any distortion there. I think that wants to be very clear because it's a very, you can really see the detail clearly, and if that's stretched or weird, it'll look bad. I think also this trim part here, we want that to look good. So let's make that look good. I think inside the dress, you know, it really doesn't matter. No one's going to see that much. You'll just see like a little bit of color in the bottom. So that part can be totally distorted. So let's go and start creating some UVs. Let's go back into isolate mode here. When you're creating seams, make sure you are in edge mode, which we are. And the way it basically works is you just go and grab some edges that you want to cut out in your UV map and go to edge and mark seam. If you want to delete them, you go to edge and clear seam. And it looks like we already have some seams because when we duplicated the body mesh to make this dress. We inherited those seams. So let's just get rid of those. So go to A, edge, and clear seam. Okay, so right now we're actually working in mirror mode. So you can see here we've got a mirror. And what that means is that any kind of UV work we do, it's only for half the object. And you can see here this M5. Over here it's actually mirrored because it's just a mirror of the first half. So we don't want that because we're going to have a flower pattern around her belt line, and that's not going to be a uniform pattern. It's going to be, you know, decorative and non-uniform. So this wouldn't actually work. So what we're going to do is do the UV work with this mirror, then we'll apply the mirror and do some more work to make the mirror run across the whole object. It's actually a little bit faster than doing the whole object all at once, and it also makes sure that your UV map is symmetrical from left to right, and it helps out with your texture work. And actually, you know what? I noticed something. When we turned the mirror off, we had some strange geometry here, and I don't know how this got here. Let's just grab it and hit G to move, and okay, so it's not affecting anything. So let's just hit X and edges and see what happens, and it's okay, nothing's happening here. It looks okay. Let's turn off our sub D and take a look. With mirrors, a lot of times the seams get kind of messed up. So I'm looking now to see if there are any problems, and it looks okay. I mean, these could be a little bit better, but I don't see any problems. So I don't know how that got there. But since we're talking about it here, so a lot of times when you're doing, when you have a mirror turned on, this happens. So somehow faces get bridged from the front to back, or, you know, sometimes you'll get like, let's see here, let's undo that. You get a face coming off the inside, and it'll mess things up, and you'll be confused because you can't see it and you don't know what's going on. So if you're getting weird problems when you're modeling, turn your mirror off and just check and see. And if you have something weird, just fix it. X and faces. Like that. Okay, so now we are back, and let's do our UVs for half of our dress. So for this part, we don't need to see the UV map, so let's turn that off or go to solid mode. And let's make sure we are in edge mode, like that. And let's go and add some seams. So these colorful lines are kind of confusing here. So the magenta ones, those are mark sharp, and the blue is edge crease. And if you make red ones, those are seams. So let's alt click this right here. That'll be our first seam. And go to edge and mark seam. And so now it's red. So the red's kind of close to magenta, so I get confused all the time. So just make sure you remember magenta is sharp and red is the seam. Okay, so let's also grab this and mark seam. And I think what we'll do, remember this is mirrored, so I think what we'll do is we'll make like one chunk for the inside that's cut right down one side here. So let's just mark these two and edge and mark, edge and mark seam. This one is one chunk, so that's fine. Then for this little flat area of the dress, that's just going to be attached to the outside. Okay, and then let's do this. Okay, so there's a couple things going on here. So when I selected that, you can see it ran down here because the loops just runs all the way through. So you can be lazy about it and just grab a face, X and delete faces, then go back to edge mode and then re-grab it and now it no longer runs all the way through. So that's the first thing going on. The second thing going on is we have a pole here. So those aren't really the perfect place to have a seam because the texture pulls a little bit funny. But I'm not planning on doing any kind of intricate stitching down the sides here, so I think it doesn't matter too much, so I'm just going to go with it. If you were, you could use this one instead over here, or you could throw in a cut like that. But I think we're going to be okay with this, so let's just go with that. Let's just make sure it didn't go too far, and yes, it stopped where we cut a hole in there. Let's go to edge and mark seam. Let's go and refill this with the F2. And then this seam for the side needs to go on this flat area here too. So let's go to edge and mark seam. Let me show you what would happen if you missed this little chunk here, because that happens a lot. So you can go to face mode and check to make sure all your boundaries are good. So you can go here and okay, that's good. That's in between the red lines, so that works. Here, that's good. It's in between the red lines here. Here, the front should be separate from the back, right? Because we put a seam down the side. So if we hit L, it's not working because they're connected, and you don't understand why. So it's because somewhere along your mesh there's a bridge that goes across, and in this case it's right here. So that happens to me a lot, so I'm just telling you, so hopefully it doesn't happen to you. So go to edge and mark seam. So now if you go back to face mode and L to select, it only selects the front, and that's the way we intend it to be. Okay, so if you'll remember, we want this area here not to be distorted, and so that's roughly this area here. So let's go and cut off just the part that we don't want distorted. So I think this here, and I think that there we can cut off. For a shape like this, where it's kind of sculpty and kind of random shaped, if you want to minimize the stretching, try and look for areas that are most geometric in nature. So this area here, it looks kind of like a cylinder, and so I think that will unwrap pretty nicely. And it also coincides with the area that I want to not be warped, which is right here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to cut this off here, edge and mark seam, like that. And then I'll go to face mode here and grab just this part here, which I'll work on first. Control I to invert, H to hide, L to grab that, UV and unwrap. Let's turn on our texture here. It looks pretty undistorted, so that's pretty good. Let's rotate this so our letters are pointing upright. You could always do this later or rotate it later, but I just find it's easier for my brain to handle this. Okay, so we've got that here, and let's try and get this all squared up. And so the reason why you could UV the whole thing like we did for the body if you took the complete character tutorial and have all these, sculpty shapes or bendy shapes, and it doesn't matter because you can texture paint on the 3D geometry. But for this dress, what we're going to do is use Photoshop to apply some of the textures. So for that reason, parts of the UV map want to be nice and straight and as much like a grid as possible. And specifically the little flower area, which we're going to apply with Photoshop. So we want this part to be nice and flat. But when you flatten it, you want to have it, you don't want to create more distortion. So see right here, it's pretty even, which is nice, but it's kind of bending away from the seam. So let's try and get this edge to this like edge here in the graphics to just be square or flush with the scene. We do that by just grabbing some points here and turn on proportional editing and G and X and just move that a bit over here and move this a bit back. Maybe we'll reduce that wheel. And so that should be more square. Right click that and align align X. So this edge here is perfectly square with the texture around it. And so when we attach the back clothing, it'll be perfectly lined up. Okay, so these coming across the middle part here are good. Down here it's good. Over here it's bending a bit. You can see that this red line here is bumping, or it kind of has a V in the middle, and we don't have it here. So and you can see over here it pushes up. So let's go and GY and just pull it a bit just to make that part straight. And the only reason why I care about that is that's front and center of the character, and so you're going to see it, you know, most often. So let's just make this front part nice and even. Okay, so now that we like this the way it is, we're going to grab that and right click and pin. And so when you pin it, when you go to this UV and unwrap, it doesn't mess with this. You can still move things like that, but when you do the unwrap, it stays. Okay, so let's Alt H to bring everything back, and let's work on more of the front here. So we want to work on this part, and we want to attach it to this part. So let's grab those two, Control I and H to hide everything else. And let's L to grab that. And you can see it's all weird over there, which is okay because we're going to go to UV and unwrap. And now it's unwrapped. So you can see how when I move it, it's pulling the stomach area. That's because I had proportional editing on. Let's turn it off. Scale this down. Let's move this down. So we just need to roughly line this up and get this upper area more like how we want it. And since this whole body or this whole dress is on a mirror, this middle section in between the two halves, you want that to be perfectly straight. So let's go and do that too. So we can, what can we do? What's the easiest way to do it? So I think you can see it's curving out here, which is bad, but here it's pretty straight, which is good. So what I think I'll do is drop a 3D cursor here, go to Transform Around Pivot Center, and hit R to rotate this. And I'm looking at the 3D view to see when it looks fairly square. Okay, that looks pretty good. Down here looks good, up here looks bad, so let's go and grab some stuff there. And then we'll look to see where it's pulling away, and I think it's pulling away right here. So shift right click to drop a 3D cursor, and then turn on proportional editing and hit R to rotate this. And I'm just gonna increase the area of influence until I can get this to be as straight as possible. Then do the same thing, drop a 3D cursor, grab that here, R, and reduce that until this is looking pretty straight. Then let's see here. You can manually adjust if you want to. And then grab the whole edge. In fact, this is something good to point out here. So this point here is actually the same point as this right here. Okay, can you see those two? If you click this one, you can see that one highlights because it's actually the same point. And so if you move, even with proportional editing turned off, if you move this one, the other one goes with it. So it's kind of weird. So if you want to move, say if I wanted to move this whole row out, out that way, you can see it's going to move the bottom with it. And so I don't want that. So what I'll do is go to face mode, grab this guy here, and I'll just move this until it's about where I want it. Then I'll check this side to see if it lines up, and I think that's probably close enough. So then I'll move this one back up here, G and Y, and let's just straighten this side up too. This part you could leave it if you wanted to, but I think I'm going to straighten it up. So maybe I'll throw a stitching seam along the edge here, and it'll look like clothing or something. I don't know, I haven't thought that far. So let's just grab some faces here, turn on proportional editing, and hit R to rotate this, and let's increase our area of influence like that. So this is looking more square. You can see we're still pushing inwards. So what I'm going to do now is going to go to point mode, grab these and hit GX to pull it in a bit. Then pull this in a bit. I'm just getting it roughly straight, and here we'll pull it out a bit. Oh, see, this is no good because I'm messing with the bottom. But I want to move that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to face mode, hit L to grab that one, H to hide it. Now go back to vertex mode, grab this, and GX to move it out until that's straight. Looking up here, it looks pretty good. So let's grab that, right click and align X. So now that's straight, and this one is straight. Since we also want to have this area straight in case we want to put a trim there, let's go and straighten that one out. So I think this one we'll just move it, GY, and pull it down. Go some more, GY, and let's increase our area of influence. Pull these guys up. Let's go to face mode. I'm going to go to face mode because I want these two edges to be consistent across the whole thing. So if you go to face mode, it doesn't move it separately. So GY and pull this one up. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's click this here, right click and align X. Nope. Align Y. Align Y. Align X. Let's just check this too, align X. Okay, so all this area here is pretty squared up. Let's check our texture. A little warpy here. I think that's probably okay. Okay, I think we're okay there. So we'll Alt-H to bring that back. Go to face mode, grab this part and that part, and then we'll go to Control-I and H. So we have both of those. Grab our torso area, drag it down so it's close to the stomach area. And I'm just trying to... So I see a bit of a problem here. We know we want to keep the stomach the way it is, and we want to have this top area bend to match it. So let's go and figure out how to do that. First, it's too wide, so let's scale down a little bit. Oh, let's turn off proportional editing. Scale it down a bit. Move this over a bit. Scale it a bit and move it over a bit. And let's move this one down like that. So this will be a bit tricky because we'll just have to memorize and kind of guess it. But you can see these points need to go upwards. But if you'll remember, if we go to point mode and move them, it moves its corresponding point. That's not what we want. So what we'll do is go to face mode, grab this, hide that, go to vertex mode, and then let's move these in with proportional editing turned on, move this in Y, and we're just going to kind of fake it. Just going to try and remember what we saw before. Okay, Alt H, and that's probably too much. Control Z, pull this down a bit, pull that down a bit. Alt H, close. Let's move these down. GY. Okay, so that's good enough. So let's go to face mode and grab our two parts we're working on. Control I and H. And then go to vertex mode, grab these two, M at center. And then just right shift and grab all these and just join them. Okay, this one got misaligned a bit, so just grab this whole thing here and align Y, align X. Let's do the same thing here, align X. Okay, so now this whole top area, nice and square, and the stomach area has very little distortion, so we're looking pretty good. Okay, so now we'll just do the same thing over and over again for the entire dress. So if you've got this down and you get it, then you can skip the rest of this video because I'll just be doing the same thing over and over again. If you want to watch and go step by step through the whole dress with me, then by all means stick around and we'll go through this together. Okay, let's get to it. So let's Alt H here and see what else we got here. Okay, so whoops, go to face mode, L. So we want to do this part next, and it goes over to this bottom edge. Okay, so now we will go to UV and unwrap. Now that's unwrapped. Turn off proportional editing, go over here, grab this guy, Control I and H. Let's make sure this is all pinned actually. Right click and pin. Grab this here. Move this down. Oops. Rotate that like that. Let's scale this down so it's roughly the same size. So I'm trying to make sure these points line up here and this point lines up over there. So I think we need to scale down a bit more. So let's drop a 3D cursor, change to 3D cursor mode and scale it down a bit more. And that's good. GY to pull this down. And let's see here. Let's get this down here. I want to get this part straightened. So let's go to vertex mode, turn on proportional editing. Let's just move this GX, move that over. And that GX, let's increase our proportional editing. If you're in 3D cursor mode, when you do the proportional editing, you can see the wheel, it sits around the 3D cursor. So just now I was doing this and I couldn't see how the proportional editing was working is because it sticks around the 3D cursor. So just be aware of that. And right click that and align Y. Let's go and align X. I think it was close enough to here where we can align the whole thing, align X. Okay, so I'm not going to worry about straightening this whole part here up because it just flares out too much on the dress area and you get too much distortion if you squished it all down. but this is looking a little weird. So you can see when your UVs turn like a lighter shade of gray, that means you have overlap. So make sure you don't have overlap. Turn off partial editing and move this down. And you can zoom in with your number pad period to see where, like you can select something in the UV view and number pad period and see where you're at. And so this looks like it's bending a lot, which is no good. So let's grab that and just see what that does, and that seems to help. Oh, you know, we had we wanted to have a trim detail on the bottom of the dress. And so we probably want to have this whole area nice and square too. So let's go and do that. So I'm just going to manually drag some of these around like that and that. I want to make sure there's not too much stretching here. We might be stretching this a little bit too much. Maybe offset it over here. Proportional editing, and just pull this down a bit. To just kind of even it out. It's a little better. Let's move these up. Move these down. Just get everything squared up. Then let's just right click that, right click and align X, align Y, Shift R, Shift R. Okay, so now this whole row, it might be kind of skewed at an angle here, but at least here and here it's straight. And so this way when we add that little trim detail, it'll be straight. And you could take some time to like straighten all these things out, like that if you wanted to. But I'm not worried about that because it's just going to be a straight line going across. I'm thinking we'll do a normal map that has a little bead running across here, and so I don't think it's going to matter. So I'll just leave it there. If you wanted to do this nicer than I do it, then go ahead and make sure all these look nice and straight in the 3D viewport. Okay, so that's that. Alt H to bring it back. Face mode. L, Control I, H. Okay, we've got our faces here. Grab that. G, let's turn off partial editing. GY and pull it up. Let's kind of, we want to line up these points with these points, and it's kind of in between there. So let's go like that and pull some of these down and some of these up. Let's go to vertex mode. Okay, so these have to come up and these come down. Let's go to face mode. L, H, vertex mode. Let's pull some of these up. G, Y. Some of these come down. G, Y. Alt H. Okay, so these come up more and that comes down more. Bit more. Okay, I think that's good enough. So now let's Alt H, grab these faces, grab those faces, Control I, H, vertex mode, grab that, right click and merge center, and just right Shift R for all, Shift R for all these. There. Okay, that's good. So the only thing that's kind of weird is this part here. So let's grab that and see where it is. And okay, I guess it's not horrible. Maybe move it in a bit. It actually looks okay. Okay. That's the front. Yeah, front half done. Okay. Okay, let's grab all these guys. Let's just move these way out of the way. And let's pin it. Then Alt H to bring everything back. Let's go to face mode and hide the front. And let's do the same thing to the back. So we'll grab this here, L, UV unwrap. Okay, let's rotate this here. Turn off proportional editing and rotate this. So I can't tell which part of this mesh is where, so I'm just going to grab some faces. So, okay, so this part here is right there, which means this is the spine, which is fine. Let's go to transform around bounding box center, scale that down. Then let's square off the middle area first, the spine area. G, Y, X. And align Y, align X. Oh, so if you align X and it does this, that's because you have the corresponding vertices somewhere else, which we do. So just go to face mode and hide it. And go back to edge mode, right click, align X. Okay, so now this middle is squared. And that looks nice. There's not much distortion. Here there's some distortion, so let's go and fix that. So let's drop a 3D cursor, grab these points and transform around. So that's squared up. We will right click and align X. And then I don't know if we want to align this in Y. And I don't think we do because this is peeking up there a bit. And the texture actually looks pretty flat. So I think this stays the way it is. And down here, that looks pretty good too. Although this is warping a bit there. You can see this cube is bigger than that cube. So let's pull these in somewhat. Okay, that's pretty good. That's Alt H to bring it back. Right click and pin. And let's grab this upper area here in face mode. And this area here. Control I, H, grab that again. Let's move it over here. And let's, what is that hole? Okay, so let's grab this here and see where it is. That is really weird. Wonder why that happened. I bet you that's where we had that pole before. Okay, well anyway, let's straighten that up. And face mode and grab this here. Let's see. I want this part to line up with this part, but I'm not sure if it's flipped or not. So I'm going to select it and look in the 3D viewport. And you can see this part and this part are not lined up. So I've got something flipped. So let's go here, R180. And let's transform around bounding box center, scale this back up again, and let's try again. Okay, so now these are lined up. Let's put this here, drop a 3D cursor, transform around 3D cursor. Let's move this down here. And it's scaled up so this point matches that point. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's move this down. And then drop a 3D cursor, grab these. Oh, look. So you can see I grabbed these and they're high here but low there. That's not good. So let's grab that, transform around bounding box center, scale Z -1, and then let's try it again. So this here, okay, so this here should be on the inside, so grab that, SY -1, SX -1. Let's try it again. This is correct. That's correct. It lines up with that. Okay, that's correct. So basically by selecting parts of your mesh from one part of the mesh to the other part, you can tell which parts line up. So this way you don't kind of mess things up. Okay, so let's go back to, let's move this up here. And let's drop a 3D cursor here, and let's move all these out with proportional editing turned on. And transform around 3D cursor. And like that. And then we'll move some of these down, G, Y. You can see I'm starting to affect the bottom, which is no good. So let's move it just a little bit. So you can't do it in point mode because it's going to affect the bottom. So let's just stick with faces. And I think these line up. This wants to come over. And this wants to come over. And I think that should be enough. Let's bring this down here. And then let's right click M and center. And just right shift all these guys. Then grab that, right click and align X. Let's check our map here and see how this top looks. Huh, it actually looks okay. There's a weird crease there. Right click and align Y, and right click and align Y. Okay, something weird happened. Oh, look at this. So for some reason, we have overlapping UVs. So if you turn off proportional editing and if you hit G and move, you can see it's right on top of there. I'm not sure why that happened, but you can select here. And so now we have here. Now we have only the edge selected. Let's make it so you can see it here. Okay, so you can grab that here and go to your UV editor and GY and pull it up just a bit. And then grab the next row, which is there, and the next row, which is there, which all makes sense. That's good. Then flatten it. Align Y, and align Y. Let's check our textures. It looks pretty close to before, but I know that since this geometry is nice and consistent, the UVs should equally be consistent. Okay, so that's that area. Let's right click this and pin it, and Alt H. And then let's do the last part of the outside. Let's go to face mode and grab that, grab that, grab that. Control I and H. Grab this, UV and unwrap. Let's move this down here. Let's rotate this in. turn that to transform around bounding box center and scale this in. Let's make sure we're lined up right. So we are, oh, okay, we're lined up right. Yep. Let's move this here and let's drop a 3D cursor and scale so this point lines up. Transform around, 3D cursor. And this is close enough, so we can just go here and go M at center and just attach all these guys. And since these are so close to being straight, I might as well just make it closer and just slowly flare out. Let's check our texture here. Yeah, and that looks nice. Maybe pull this a bit in. Okay, so I forgot that this is a mirror, and so this inside edge we want to all line up perfectly. Oh, and we also need to make this whole bottom area squared off. So let's go and do that. So let's grab some faces. Let's make sure nothing else is visible. Grab that, do proportional editing, and let's rotate like that. And let's grab this here and rotate some more. Grab that. This is it's the kind of work where you just want to go to a room by yourself so no one bothers you, and so you can just peacefully do your work. Align Y, grab this, align Y. Let's grab this, align Y. So we just totally stretched this bottom area here. But now we know that these are all horizontal, so that's good. And let's make sure this one is not too bad. So we'll turn on proportional editing and let's just pull that down some. So the stretching is kind of even. Maybe let's pull these in a bit. Just trying to get all those cubes to be a little bit more consistent. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. And Alt H. So we've got our main front of the dress and the main back of the dress done. So now we can just do the bottom. So let's go here, face mode, and let's grab the parts that are done. Let's go to H to hide those. Let's grab this guy here and find him on the UV window. And go to UV unwrap. Let's just transform around bounding box center and scale that down and move it aside. Then we'll grab this guy here, whoops, face mode here, and we have a closed loop, UV unwrap. So that's good, and I think what we're going to do, since this is basically a ribbon going around the whole thing, we're just going to even this whole thing out. So let's, oops, let's just move that, rotate that, go to edge mode and grab this, right click, align Y, face mode and hide that. Go to edge mode, right click, align X, grab that, align X, grab that, align Y, grab that, align Y, grab that and align Y, grab that, and align Y. Go to face mode. So now this face right here is perfectly square. So click this guy, then hit L to grab everything else. So you'll see that our perfectly square face is white, where everything else is orange. Then right click, follow active quads. And so it creates, everything just follows the geometry of this first one. So now it's perfectly square. You'll have lots of stretching on the inside here. It's the inside, so you can't really see it too well, but now at least it's nice and square. Let's scale it down because we don't care about that. Alt H and bring everything back. Oops, turn off partial editing, move that here. Okay, so we've got everything UV'd for our half body. Okay, so I'm just checking it over really quickly to see, make sure these seams are all pretty straight in the front and the back. And I'm seeing, looks like the heights of these are different. No, it's actually okay. It's the widths that are different. The width is tight here. It's looser here. I'm less concerned about that, the width, than I am the height, because you can kind of pick up the difference on the seam if the heights are different. So I think that's okay. Over here, it seems to get very tight in this whole area here. Maybe over here too. So let's go and grab a face where it starts getting tight. We will, actually let's hide the stuff we don't want. So let's hide that, click where it gets tight, right click there, and let's grab the faces below that 3D cursor. Let's Alt H, let's Control unselect those things, turn on proportional editing, and we'll just scale it in the 3D viewport. When you scale it, make sure that even though you have proportional editing on, you don't affect this thing and this thing here. So let's try S and transform around 3D cursor, S and Y, and it's not affecting anything else, so I know we're good. So now let's look in our 3D viewport, and S and Y, and let's just scale this until it feels like it matches the heights of these cubes, match the heights of these cubes better. And we can adjust the size of the 3D, the proportional editing on the fly, and I think this looks better in this area. Now this is stretched too much, so let's grab the face again, drop a 3D cursor again, grab everything below it, and then let's go in S and Y again to make the remaining parts match. And I think SY, and I think that looks better. Yeah, okay. I think it feels better. It does seem like it's wider in this area and tighter in that area, but it seems like it matches. And you could keep noodling this to get it to be, much better. I probably would too, but for the sake of the tutorial, I think this is good. And then these things don't matter too much. Those look good. Okay. Let's go to object mode, grab your mesh. Let's make sure we have our mesh selected. Then go to apply. If the apply doesn't work, that's probably because you have shape keys, so just hit minus to delete those. Okay, so grab your mesh, go to edit mode, and you'll see the UVs look exactly the same. That's because we have two sets of UVs sitting on top of each other. So to remove them, go to solid shade mode, go to X-ray mode, then go to face mode, and go to the top view. Then select half of your mesh, like that, and make sure you only have half your mesh selected, which we do. Okay, then go to your 3D viewport, turn off proportional editing, and hit GX and move it aside. Let's transform around bounding box center. And if we go to shaded mode, you'll see we have, okay, let's turn this back on here. So you'll see we have one half UV'd and the other half is UV'd. So everything is UV'd. However, half the UVs are backwards. So click a face that's backwards, go to your 3D viewport and hit number pad period to zoom in to the area that's reversed. Grab that whole area, S, X, -1. And now, if you go to your 3D viewport, you can see all the UVs are facing the correct direction. Okay, now we just need to line these things back up. So let's go to here, GX, and move it over. And there's probably a better way to line these things up. I just don't know it. Let's move these over here, and this inside doesn't matter too much, but let's just make sure they're lined up correctly. Okay, so this part, these two parts should be attached. So let's go here and GX, pull that in. And then this guy here, let's move it over and let's grab these two. I have X-ray turned on, so I'm selecting through. If you turn off X-ray, you no longer select through. So by selecting these two, I can see where they are on the UV map. And then I can rotate 180 to make them line up. And of course it's weird. And this probably matters the least because it's inside the dress. So really that doesn't matter. Okay, and then let's line up this last part here. GX, pull it over here. Oh, shoot. Okay, so I must have warped this at some point. I probably left it visible while I was scaling something else. So that's okay. It's not too warped, so we can just do a quick fix. So let's just drag it pretty close. Make sure we're in face mode. Select everything else and hide, because we're going to edit these in edge mode. And then SX0. And now everything should line up perfectly again. We did just distort this a little bit, but I don't think it's enough to matter. So I'm going to just go with it. Alt H. And then let's just scale this stuff and make it all fit. So move that there, scale this down, move that there. Let's go to face mode and rotate to 180. Let's move this like up over there. And let's scale this down some so it fits. I feel like this is rather inefficient. So let's scale it. Oops, let's turn on proportional editing and scale in just a little bit. Turn off proportional editing, grab those, and let's just move this. Turn off proportional editing, and let's move this in some. And then scale it a little bit bigger so we get a little bit more resolution. Let's just rotate this 90 and drop that there and drop that there. So this is kind of really not very efficient, but I think that's just what it is. There's not much to this dress. Okay, well, you know what? We can just do this. We can still pack these things somewhat efficiently because maybe we can use this texture for something else. So we'll put this here and put that there. Maybe if we have shoes or some other accessories, we can use this map for those parts of the clothing. So let's do that. So I think we've got a fully UV'd dress. Okay, that's it for our video today. I hope that was useful to you. If it was, leave a comment to let me know, or like or subscribe, or better yet, support me on Patreon. And in the next video, we will create some fine sculpted details and use that to make a normal map. See you next time.